episode 9 of Teachers Lift. This week, our PolyU team of hosts, Jessica and Eric, are chatting with Andy Jarvis about the state of assessment issues over at the English Language Centre at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. Now I'll turn it over to Jessica and Eric, who are chatting with Andy.
Back to the latest installment of the Teachers Lift. We're coming at you from the Hong Kong PolyU. I guess this is now episode 2, right, Jessica?
Yeah.
PolyU. My name is Eric Tindall, and next to me, or along with me, is my partner in crime here, Jessica Xia.
Hi everyone.
We are both teachers at the English Language Center of PolyU. And how was your weekend of social isolation, Jessica?
I forgot how to talk to people, so I really hope this interview goes smooth with our very special guest today. We have Mr. Andy Jarvis with us, and he's a teaching fellow here at PolyU ELC, and he's also the coordinator of our English for Specific Purposes courses. Hi, Andy. How was your weekend?
Pretty good.
That didn't sound like a pretty good.
Went for my daily walk.
Nice.
Watched some Netflix.
Oh, nice.
That's about it.
Yeah, what series are you on now?
I've been watching a lot of science fiction recently.
You still teach the science
I'm
fiction course, right?
teaching a science fiction course.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been catching up with that. So that's been good.
Yeah. Hi, Andy. I think a lot of people might not really know what your job, like your role, is all about. Could you maybe just start us off with talking about how you coordinate we call DSR subjects, like discipline-specific requirement subjects, but I guess it's the English for Specific Purposes subjects. So could you maybe share with us your role in doing that?
Sure. Yeah, so we have around 30 like ESP courses. So some of them are like workplace courses, preparing students for like workplace communication. Some of them are more like academic discipline subjects. And we also have what we call embedded subjects as well. So those ones are kind of embedded into a department subject. So really my role is to work with the subject leaders and help them to keep the courses running, develop resources and help them with assessments, that kind of thing. So it's a kind of support role for the subject leaders.
You just mentioned assessments. You're also on the assessment team, right? How did you get into that?
I didn't know I would be on the assessment team. When I kind of accepted this coordinator role, I quickly found out that I was included on some email chains and kind of indirectly found out that I was on the assessment team as well.
So let's talk about assessments, because this is one of the big issues that's being talked about all around the world right now. I want to give you a quote from an article which kind of stood out to me when I was reading it over the weekend. This is from the Times Higher Education. Somebody named Hamish Coates from Tsinghua University. He's the director of higher education division at Tsinghua University. He said that 2020 may be the first year in history that assessment is harder for universities than it is for the students. Would you agree with that, based on your work so far?
It's definitely been a lot of work, getting all the assessments online. So it's been a lot of like communicating with the subject leaders, and we've also got someone in place who deals with assessment, like all of the assessments for the whole centre. So definitely there's been a load of different kind of like dynamics, like data privacy, all sorts of things, like making them practical, thinking about like the kind of equipment the students got, their Wi-Fi connection. So there's been a whole host of sort of issues flying around that we've needed to work through. So it hasn't been straightforward, and there's been a lot of trade-offs as well. So yeah, I tend to agree with what that professor said.
What type of assessments are there in our like English for specific purposes courses? Could you share with us on that?
Yeah, so we've got writing and speaking assessments. We do have a reading one as well, but the majority are writing and speaking. So with the writing ones, we've got like out of class submissions, and then we've got like the in-class writing ones. So yeah, subject leaders who have got all out of class writing ones are pretty happy at the moment because they haven't really needed to change anything. But then yeah, we've got speaking ones as well, which have tended to, I think, have basically all been in class up to this point. So we've got presentations and like meetings and discussion type assessments as well. And then alongside that, we've also got group assignments and like individual based assignments.
Which ones were, just curious, which ones were the most difficult to turn online?
Definitely the group speaking assignments, especially we've got some fairly sort of intricate assignments that are like meetings, like workplace meetings and interviews where students have to get into groups, they have to kind of interview each other, and it's the format of the assessment is quite sort of complex, so putting that online has probably been the most tricky thing.
So are there any guidelines or maybe like a modus operandi, if you will, that you would like to give to all the teachers out there who are listening and who may be grappling with some of these assessment related questions? Is there anything that you've taken from your experience that you think might be useful for not just the teachers here in Hong Kong, but all around the world who are now, trying to answer some of these questions about how to conduct assessments in an online format?
Yeah, so like you say, there's a lot of things to grapple with. I guess the main thing is just keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible for everyone's sake, for the students, for the teachers, and for the subject leaders as well. So I guess when you start thinking, I need to make this online, and you get quite ambitious about it, and you think, this is doable, I can do this. But then when you start to think about all the practical stuff, then you start to like bring it down to reality. And it's better to keep it simple, keep it practical for everybody. So just the format of how you do the assessment, and also whether to make it like synchronous or asynchronous. I guess you got to go back to the learning objectives and the rubrics. So if you make changes, you've really got to think, are students completing the learning objectives or not? So you have to go back to them and use that as a kind of guiding force. And then there's the whole data privacy thing as well. So you've got to make sure that, that kind of trumps everything. So making it secure for the students is really the main consideration. So a whole host of things, but just keep it simple and practical for everybody.
Do you have
Go for it, Jessica.
Ahead. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, could you maybe share with us one successful example of how you kept things very practical, simple, like how maybe you've turned an assessment that was quite complicated or quite ambitious into something very doable for the teachers and also students? And maybe what you did in the process?
So I mean, like the interview and meeting ones have been the most tricky. So for those ones, for example, like we limit the number of students. It used to be like 4 or 5 students in the assessment, but now it's just 2 students and the instructor. So that's limiting the number of people is one thing. And then, yeah, like certain elements can be put on, certain elements can be put asynchronously. So some of the interviews, we can just have like set questions and then students just record themselves rather than having it live. So although yes, you lose some stuff, you also gain stuff as well. So it's more kind of practical, it's more straightforward for the students to do that. And we've also found out that a lot of employers are now doing like video interview submissions. So in a way, we're kind of following what's going on in the workplace as well, where more employers are having these like video submissions as a sort of first stage of the recruitment process. So I think, yeah, those ones have changed quite a lot, but we've tried to get like a good balance.
Andy, you've mentioned data privacy as being one of the main concerns that you're having to deal with in this transition, and I think this is something that that seems to be slipping everybody's mind right now. We're more concerned about format, how do we conduct assessments, but the question of data privacy and data protection, this hasn't really come up much. What problems with data privacy have you run into or noticed as you make some of these transitions?
I guess because the thing is like knowing if that student is that student. So we had the idea of asking students to show their like identity cards and say their name and that kind of thing, but then we kind of figured out that if it's a group assessment, then we can't do that. So for things like the presentations, like an individual presentation, we can ask the student to show their ID card, but if there's other students involved, then we can't. So that's been a bit of a problem.
There's this one, I was reading this one story last week. Another, an unnamed institution, may or may not be in Hong Kong, is requiring their students to use Zoom to record
not the first time
themselves
that we
as
have
they
to
write
turn our assessments online or adapt to online teaching.
So the Zoom, the
back
camera
in
has to
November,
be
December of
positioned
2019,
over them as they are
all
doing
of our
the
ELC
assessment to make
courses
sure
or all
they're
of
not
PolyU courses
cheating.
had to really quickly
what is your
adapt to the
reaction
online
when you
format.
see something
so
like this?
I was just wondering, what was the biggest challenge you faced as the DSR coordinator back then?
Yeah, but for me, it's taking it a little bit too far. So I think it's a bit impractical, and it's just an added toll on the students, the teachers, the subject leaders, everyone. So for the amount of students that would, kind of break isolation, go and get someone else to write their assignment, all the trouble, I don't think a lot of students are going to do that. And then adding to that, we already have out-of-class assignments, so students can already use all sorts of online tools anyway. So if we're going to have that debate, then I don't think it's the right time to have it now, especially when teachers are struggling with online teaching. So it's probably a step too far for me. The effort involved doesn't justify, what you could achieve by doing that.
This is actually not the first time that we have to turn our assessments online or adapt to online teaching.
because back in November, December of 2019,
Yeah.
all of our ELC courses or all the PolyU courses had to really quickly adapt to the online format.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, what was the biggest challenge you faced as the DSR coordinator back then?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, we've definitely done it better second time round. Back then, I guess the problem was it was like the speed of how the events were kind of unraveling. I mean, at the start, we didn't know how long online teaching would go on for. It started off as being just a day, and then it kind of got extended to a couple of days. It wasn't until the end of the week that the university said, right, the rest of the semester is going to be online. And then the following week, some of the assessments were starting.
Sorry, go for it, Eric.
Things were just kind of like deteriorating each day. It was getting more severe, and no one could have predicted, that what would happen at our institution with a whole, the whole place being completely inaccessible and surrounded by the police. So that was like a major challenge. And then the other thing is the university itself was obviously having to deal with this enormous situation. So all the kind of policy or guidelines about how to conduct assessments, etc., didn't come out. I guess because a lot of subjects have exams, like there's an exam period, but for our assessments, they're done during the semester. So there's a kind of lack of. I mean, we were all in touch with each other within the ELC to try and come up with some guidelines and just get everything sorted out. But the speed of how the events kind of unraveled, that was probably the biggest challenge. And during the COVID incident, then we've had a bit more time, I guess, to prepare for that.
This brings us, of course, to the next question I think many teachers are curious about is, this is your second time around doing this, Andy. You're transitioning to online assessments for the second time in a matter of 6 months, whereas many teachers in the world right now are just doing it their first time. So my question is, what mistake did you make the first time around that you quickly recognized and you avoided repeating the second time around when it comes to designing or administering these online assessments?
I mean, I guess first time round, like, because I was communicating with like subject leaders more like on a one-to-one basis, but second time round, we've kind of come up with some sort of like guidelines that subject leaders can use, like some practical tips and guidelines that they can use when making their assessments online. And we're kind of in groups now. So if some subject leaders are doing like a synchronous group assessment, then we're kind of communicating with each other. So I guess first time round, subject leaders might have just been thinking, right, it was more like survival, I guess. They just thought, right, we've got to get this online, we've got to do this. Whereas now we're kind of in groups, we've got more guidelines, and we can take our time a little bit and discuss things more. So hopefully that has an impact on the teachers as well, that it's a little bit of a smoother process.
I think Yeah, I think a lot of teachers around the world now are experiencing what you did back in November, December. It's just struggling to put everything online and in a very, sorry, in a very short period of time. But I do really appreciate the guidelines that you came up with, because I remember getting an email and saying, okay, so we need to think ahead about the assessments, and here are some samples that you can actually take into consideration. And here are some information that you can share with your students. Here's some information that you can share with your teaching team. So all of that was really, really clear. And as like a subject leader, it really helps us during this period to think about the different options that we have and how we can actually deliver this assessment in different styles. It's not just, okay, this is a synchronous speaking assessment, so we have to do it synchronous on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. There are other ways that we can approach this as well. So I really did appreciate that. So thank you very much for putting together those guidelines.
That's good. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Has, this kind of as a follow-up to what Jessica just said here, are there actually any types of assessment tasks that work much better in this online format than in a face-to-face format?
Sorry, so say that again. So they work better in the online.
Right. Are there any assessment tasks that students have to do, that you found actually, oh, this makes a lot of sense online, and this actually works better, more efficiently online than it does in a physical classroom? Just wondering if you've noticed that. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but the thing is, if you make it online, you increase the class time. So if you've got an extra week of teaching in face-to-face teaching, so that's definitely an advantage. I guess like the example of the online interviews, I think we're finding out that it's quite an authentic way to do it. It could be even more authentic than a teacher asking interview questions. So especially like for the workplace courses, then I think it's good. It's been a good opportunity to actually find out what employers are actually doing, and then trying to reflect that in our assessments. So I think doing the recorded interview is kind of authentic, and it's not too bad for the students as well. I mean, they're pretty used to recording themselves and uploading it. They get a bit more time to prepare. So I think like that example could be implemented into the courses.
So you're thinking about keeping these changes even when we go back to face-to-face?
I don't know. Yeah, that we'd have to go back to the subject leaders, see how they think. And I guess over the next year, we also don't know what's going to happen, whether we're going to still be doing online teaching or not, whether we have another crisis. Who knows what's going to happen? So
yeah, I hope we just don't forget how to teach face-to-face. So when we actually go back into the classroom, we're still able to, engage with the students. Yeah, but just like what you said, like what we're doing online now kind of helps us better prepare students for the future in a way. Like when they're applying for jobs, a lot of, like what you said, a lot of the companies are adopting video submissions now. So like in a way, would you say that we're better preparing our students for communication needs post-graduation?
Yeah, I reckon. I think it's something like the whole online element was something kind of lurking in the background. We all knew it was there, but we didn't really. We knew that we had to deal with it, but I guess we didn't do. I guess this has given us an opportunity to really face that head on now, and think, how can we do that online? How could we integrate more like online elements into the subjects? And on the flip side of that, we also know like more like the limitations of the online format. So in a way, that's legitimized face-to-face instruction as well. So it's sort of been both sides to it. But definitely, I think it's been a good opportunity to find out what employers are doing and how we could integrate that into our subjects to make them more authentic.
So just looking forward a little bit, Andy, I know it's hard, as you said, it's hard to predict the future. We don't know what crises are going to come up or how long this will last. But assuming things go back to a relatively normal, what is our stance? Are we gonna move many of these things permanently online, or regardless of whether or not students are physically present in the classroom, or are we gonna go back to how it always was before, 100% face-to-face, do everything in our usual face-to-face format, face-to-face assessments? Just wondering if you have any take on that. Is there any? Are we gonna go back to normal, or is it always gonna now be in a middle ground in the future?
I hope that we don't just go back to what we were doing. I hope that this whole experience, has some value and will help us to develop the subjects and develop the student and teaching experience. I don't want to say we're going to implement everything that we've done now, because some stuff does work better face to face. But it's definitely made us question what we're doing, and there's a lot of positives that we can get from the whole experience. So I don't think we should just kind of revert back to what we were doing, but at the same time, I think we need to find out what students think, and also how also what the teachers think, and not sort of rush into just changing everything like we've done this semester. But definitely, don't want to just go back to how it's always been. I think we need to use this as an opportunity for change.
I think one good thing that came out of it is teachers realize that online teaching isn't that difficult or isn't that scary as we all thought it would be.
Yeah, it's not been too bad at all. Yeah. It's I think people are kind of in a kind of groove now. It seems to be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think when we move forward, if we're trying to introduce some elements online, I think teachers would be open to that. I think after this experience, they'd be open to changes and maybe just better preparing students for the future.
Yeah, I think everybody's confidence with all the online tools is now there. So certain parts that we can integrate into the experience.
And you were talking about how one major aspect of moving forward is to understand what students need, right? Do you have any ideas of how you'll be doing that? Once you're able maybe to meet with students face to face. Are you thinking about focus group interviews? How do we try to really understand students' experience and their need?
We've got our own sort of online questionnaire which we'll send out to the students. So hopefully we'll get some feedback from that. yeah, I haven't really thought that far, but I think that we should hear from students, yeah, and find out what elements they liked, what they didn't like, and the same from teachers as well. So if there are elements that they think would definitely like benefit our courses, then yeah, I think we can definitely consider that.
So Andy, on this topic of, you mentioned you're sending out a questionnaire to the students in order to obtain feedback on the course and feedback on their experience, right? And I know we've always been doing this in the ELC, right? Not just this semester, but in the previous semesters as well. Basically, I don't know, the best way to phrase this question, but how much stock would you put in those questionnaire results? Given that this is such a drastically different format than what the students are used to, and this is the first time they've experienced this. This is the first time we've experienced it, and I know just from in my own experience, when I look at results of questionnaires, where students have to rate this subject on a scale of 1 to 10, and you get a student who says 1. And you look at their reason, and it's because, I prefer face-to-face. So it's not really like a comment on the online course design. It's more of a comment on she just prefers being in a face-to-face classroom. So when you're reviewing the results, are you going to run into, do you anticipate running into those type of difficulties of interpreting what exactly they mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have to think like, because this is, like you say, this is such a unique semester, then what can actually be implemented into like changing the courses? But subject leaders, they do have to go through all of the responses and like either implement the change or kind of give a reason for not implementing the change. So it's kind of part of the QA measures. So they have to justify, not implementing something or implementing something. But yeah, like you've pointed out, generally, anyway, in any semester, you get some students who like something and some students who don't like something. And it's very difficult for the subject leaders to balance that out, because we've had examples like where they make a change one semester because students ask for something, and then the next semester the students say the opposite, and then the subject lead is like, okay, do I change it back to how it was? So it's tricky, but I guess like in our center, we've got like multiple ways of feedback from multiple stakeholders, so we kind of balance out what changes to make on the subjects, and like I said before, it's got to be just practical. That's the main thing, like teachable. This is like the guiding thing, teachable, practical, authentic. So these are the things that the kind of principles that that guide us when we make the changes.
How about you personally, Andy? I know you're teaching, or you're coordinating a science fiction subject. Is that correct? How about just speaking from your own perspective? Are there any stories that you'd like to share about your transition to online teaching from your own class?
Yeah. I mean, I guess because we were told that the first 5 weeks were online, and then we'd have like a recess period, and then we'd wait it out until we can resume face-to-face teaching. So I guess for me, I kind of locked onto that, and I was like planning for 5 weeks, and I was preparing the students' expectations for 5 weeks. So, I was kind of saying, let's make a go of this. We could, this is doable. We can do this. We've got 5 weeks. It's achievable. So just trying to like give the students a pep talk and set their expectations that it's not going to be forever, and then and then when the pandemic got worse and the university needed to change that approach, so I understand that that's okay, but then they needed to kind of like re-motivate the students and kind of re-justify to them, we can do this. This is what we can meet the learning objectives. I'm going to do my best to make this experience, positive for you. Like we can get to the end, etc., etc. So I guess that change was quite challenging. But it hasn't been too bad. I mean, the students have been pretty good, actually, and funnily enough, because a lot of the activities are like kind of like a brainstorming activities that we do, and they're coming up with some great ideas, like even through the chat. I really like the fact that when I'm like, obviously don't try to lecture them, but when I am speaking, they're also adding stuff to the chat, so I can really find out more like what they're thinking this time round, So
do you actually think that these current events help actually contextualize science fiction for them, the genre that they?
Well, there's a lot of parallels because some of the themes that we're talking about are like kind of apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic events, viruses and all this kind of stuff.
Has any student used their personal experience during this time as, let's say, a plot for their own story? I remember you saying that they have to write their own story, right?
Yeah, I don't know yet because the stories, they're just doing the first draft. But they're certainly, mentioning this kind of stuff in the course, and there's that side of it, and so it's definitely, I'm sure they can see the relevance of the course.
Yeah, perhaps the course is more realistic than anything else than at any other time in the past. Huh? We're moving away from sci-fi.
I think you're going to be getting a lot of interesting stories. Please do share them with us.
I will. Yeah. I'll get them to submit to our publication, our student publication. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. We do have. Could you introduce that to our listeners? The student publication that we have.
Our own student publication called Inscribe. So whatever subject students are doing, they can submit one of their assignments, whether it's like some kind of project or an essay, or in our case, like it's a story. So they can submit that, and it's they work with an ELC teacher, and then it's published. So it's a pretty good chance for them. Yeah,
maybe we'll be reading a lot about how they're going to survive this. Survive online learning and also surviving COVID-19.
I think also for the because for our ESP subjects as well, then there's a certain, because around the world, people are having meetings online, etc. So in a certain way, there's an authentic element to all of it as well. And that online communication is going to be part of their role, most probably when they're in work. So there's that side of it as well. It's kind of a real experience for them.
So we should value this opportunity as a chance to teach an authentic authentic context to the students, right?
Yeah, I reckon. Yeah, that's how we can tell ourselves. We can justify it that way.
No, I think you bring up a great point. Yeah, more and more communication, especially after this, this incident. I expect a lot more communication will be done online, even in the years into the future. So certainly the students are getting valuable opportunities to exercise and practice and be assessed on this key skill. So
absolutely, yeah, I think that's right.
So thank you very much, Andy, for being with us today.
Thank you.
I think you provided some useful insights on assessments and how to convert them to an online format, and some of the things we should think about, keeping them simple and keeping the channels of communication open with all the stakeholders. Being concerned about things like data privacy. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts here today in the lift with everybody. And we hope you come back and share some of those sci-fi stories with us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today. Teachers Lift is a collaborative endeavor made possible by the efforts of teachers at the English Language Center at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, the Center for Applied English Studies at the University of Hong Kong, and the Center for Language Education at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Your support is important. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Liking and following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram will help other teachers to find us, so we hope you'll take a few minutes to show your support. All the relevant links are at teacherslift.com. If you're on a holiday right now, we hope you're enjoying it. Until next week, keep lifting.